The next time you walk past a pre-1900 administrative building in your city, I want you to stop. Don't look at the grand entrance or the towering columns. Look at the ground. Look closely at the very base of the structure where the stone meets the sidewalk. You will see them. Perfectly crafted windows, half submerged in solid earth, positioned for a street level that no longer exists. These are not mere basement vents. They are ornate, arched, and finished with the same meticulous detail as the upper stories. They are windows meant to look out onto a horizon, yet today they stare into a wall of dirt. Official blueprints from the horse and carriage era dismiss these impossible excavations as simple architectural choices or light wells. But the craftsmanship on these buried levels often exceeds the beauty of the floors visible to the sun. You are walking over the remains of a world-altering event that has been systematically scrubbed from your textbooks, and the evidence is hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally ask the right question. The official narrative claims that between 1800 and 1850, humanity was a primitive society of wooden carts, candles, and steam engines. We are told our ancestors were struggling to survive, yet during this exact window, massive megalithic structures appeared across every continent simultaneously. From the granite bases of Washington District of Columbia to the limestone roots of Moscow, and from the grand palaces of Buenos Aires to the massive cathedrals of Melbourne, these buildings share a haunting, identical characteristic. They appear to be sitting in several meters of deposited silt. This is the physical signature of the mud flood, a global cataclysm that redefined the surface of our planet just before the modern era began. Think about the sheer volume of earth required to bury the foundations of entire cities. In an age before the steam shovel or the hydraulic excavator, moving that much soil would have required a workforce of millions and created literal mountains of dirt in our city centers. Yet, there are no records of such excavations. There are no paintings of the massive mounds of earth that should have been piled high during construction. Instead, we find mid-19th century photographs of empty cities. These images are chilling. You see grand marble palaces standing weathered and ancient, with wide paved boulevards that are completely deserted. When people finally appear in these photos, they look like squatters in a ruin they did not build. They wear ragged clothes and use primitive carts, looking utterly out of place against the backdrop of high-technology architecture that seems to have been inherited rather than constructed. This physical shift was preceded by a celestial glitch that defies every law of meteorology. On May 19, 1780, the people of New England experienced what became known as the Day Without a Sun. At 10 in the morning, the sky did not just dim, it turned to the pitch black of midnight. The birds went to sleep in the middle of the day. The cows returned to their barns, confused and lowing in the dark. People lit candles and huddled in their homes in a state of sheer, paralyzing terror, believing the day of judgment had arrived. History books blame forest fires in Canada, but the darkness covered thousands of square miles, and the air did not smell of wood or smoke. It was a thick, heavy, unnatural gloom. This was the beginning of the Great Erasure, a period where the sky and the earth were being reconfigured to suit a new, more restrictive reality. It was as if the very atmosphere was being reset. As the mud settled and the sky cleared, the survivors didn't just lose their homes, they lost their history. If you look at the maps produced in the 17th century, you will see something that should not exist according to modern history. You will see a massive empire spanning from the Ural Mountains all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It was called Tartaria. It was not a nomadic tribe. It was a sophisticated global power with its own flag, its own emperors, and a massive infrastructure that connected the east to the west. By the late 1800s, this empire was gone. It was replaced by a vast empty Siberia on the maps and a collection of fragmented states. The Great Cartographic Purge was a systematic operation to delete the most powerful civilization the world has ever known from our collective memory. They didn't just defeat Tartaria, they unmade it. The year 1884 served as the final nail in the coffin of our memory. During the International Meridian Conference in Washington District of Columbia, the global power structure gathered to synchronize the world's clocks. They established the Greenwich Meridian as the 0 point of time and space. This was not just a convenience for sailors, it was a ritual of domination. By standardizing time, they severed our connection to the natural, localized rhythms of the old world. They imposed an artificial grid over the planet, ensuring that every human being would henceforth operate within a controlled, synchronized simulation. The maps were redrawn, the borders were solidified, and the grand, free territories of the past were partitioned into manageable tax farms called nation-states. To keep a population from remembering the truth, you must replace their memory with a blank slate. This is the dark, heartbreaking reality of the orphan trains. Between 1854 and 1929, an estimated 250,000 children were moved by rail across the United States. We are told these were merely the children of poor immigrants or victims of the plague. But the lack of documentation suggests something far more sinister. These were the children of the Old World. They were the survivors of the cataclysm, separated from their parents and their heritage to be reprogrammed by the state. Imagine the scene at a dusty train station in the Midwest. A line of children, some too young to even know their own last names, standing on a platform while strangers poked and prodded them like livestock. These children were the first generation of the new lie. They were given new names, new histories, and taught a version of the world that began with the Industrial Revolution, ensuring that the secrets of the previous civilization died with their parents. While these children were being distributed, the authorities were busy constructing the great world fairs. These were not the innocent celebrations of progress we are led to believe. The Chicago World's Fair of 1893, the White City, was a temporary indoctrination center. It featured breathtaking complexes of Greco-Roman architecture that looked like they had stood for 1,000 years. Within these fairs, they featured baby incubators where infants were put on display like curiosities. These fairs showcased inherited technology, such as wireless electricity and advanced machinery, as if they were brand new inventions. It was a controlled environment designed to brainwash the new generation before the structures were deliberately demolished. You do not spend years and millions of dollars building a marble city of wonders only to blow it up months later unless you are hiding the evidence of how it was truly built and what its true purpose was. The grandeur of that lost world was not just for show, it was functional. If you examine the star forts scattered across the globe, you will notice their geometry is fractal and perfectly symmetrical. From above, they look like complex, giant circuit boards etched into the earth. They were not built for defense against cannons. Their walls are often thin, and their angles make no sense for traditional warfare. They were part of a global energy grid designed to harvest the ether, the free, atmospheric electricity that once powered our entire world. The cathedrals we see today, with their towering spires, rose windows, and mercury-filled orbs, were never meant to be silent houses of worship. They were power stations. The very word cathedral contains the root cathode. The spires were antennas, drawing energy from the ionosphere and distributing it through the stone frameworks of the cities. The stained glass and the massive organs were part of a frequency-based healing and energy system. But the new architects of our reality could not allow energy to be free. They needed a system of scarcity to maintain control. They stripped the conductive metals from the roofs, replaced the etheric collectors with crosses to change the narrative, and implemented the metered fossil fuel grid that keeps you dependent and in debt today. To protect this monumental lie, the institutions of rigid science were established. The Smithsonian Institution serves as the ultimate silo of silence. Throughout the 19th century, local newspapers across North America reported massive skeletal remains being unearthed from ancient mounds. These were giants, 7 to 12 feet tall, often found with double rows of teeth and copper armor. In almost every instance, agents from the Smithsonian arrived and seized the remains for study, and they were never seen again. By removing the physical evidence of a prior, more dominant human race, the controllers could maintain the fiction of a primitive to advanced evolution. They want you to believe you are at the absolute peak of human achievement, so you won't realize you're actually living in a state of technological and spiritual degradation. The decisive moment of this global takeover occurred in 1848. Known to historians as the Springtime of Nations, it was a period of simultaneous revolutions that swept across the entire globe at once. This was the military synchronization of the New World Order. The old power structures, the remnants of the Tartarian system, were systematically dismantled and replaced by the nation-state model. This allowed for centralized banking, nationalized education, and the implementation of a single unified narrative. The 1848 synchronization was a global coup d'etat against the past. It was the moment the architects signed their work, moving the world from a decentralized free energy civilization into a fragmented, warring collection of territories. They created a scarce history of constant conflict and slow progress because that narrative is essential for their control. If you knew that your ancestors lived in cities of light, with a deep understanding of the cosmos and access to limitless energy, you would never accept the life of a debt slave. You would never spend 40 years of your life working to pay for the heat and light that the earth provides for free. The lie is maintained because the truth is too empowering. We are living in the ruins of a grander, borderless civilization that was intentionally dismantled to create the current master-servant economic loop. You can feel it, can't you? That nagging sense that something is missing, that the world feels hollower than it should. That is the resonance of your true heritage calling to you. They renamed the landmarks, they burned the maps, and they took the children, but they could not erase the stones themselves. The stones remember. The buried windows of our cities are silent witnesses to a crime committed against all of humanity. You are not a random product of a chaotic, primitive universe. You are the inheritor of a stolen legacy, a descendant of a world that was beautiful, advanced, and free. The time has come to stop believing the script they handed you and start remembering the truth that is written in the very foundations of the world you walk upon every day. Look down at those windows. They are not looking at the dirt. They are waiting for you to look back and see what was lost.